Welcome. Uh, I did kind of expect to be doing a show at the moment because I knew the news was coming. I talked about it a little bit last night, but yeah, if you're here, we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson. Um, yeah, it was going to be an interesting conversation with myself, I suppose. I don't know if I'm going to be on my own show later. Hopefully, might be there for some of it, but either way, as we all know, the news broke today that Judge Robinson will suspend Watson for 6 games, and then the NFL has 3 days to appeal. And I've heard a lot of speculation of will they appeal, won't they appeal? The NFL, they yes, it's a joke, and we all know that. We'll go get to that. Don't worry, the rant's coming. It's coming. Don't worry. Just have a little patience. Um, we know that the NFL in the last CBA agreement collectively bargained and won the right to this appeal that they now have. Now, so for me, this is obviously like we have a background in so my master's degree in sports management. So you don't collectively bargain for a right that you now have that you don't intend to use. So they don't like this 6-game suspension. Of course, they don't like it. They asked for an indefinite suspension lasting no shorter than a year with a massive fine. I mean, that's what they wanted. And they got 6 games. So they don't like this ruling. So if they don't like the ruling, I expect them to appeal the ruling within the next 3 days. And as we know, the NFL's appeal is heard by Roger Goodell or his designee, which is just going to be a lackey who does whatever Roger Goodell says. So the NFL will, once again, as it was before, be the judge, the jury, and the executioner of a potential new penalty. Now, what could that penalty be? I think that it's going to be now. If Watson doesn't like the penalty, he does. You can always sue. It won't go well. No NFL player has ever won a lawsuit in the current era because courts don't tend to overturn collectively bargained processes like that. They really don't want to do that. There's a lot of precedent towards not doing that. Brady sued. He lost. Zeke sued. Lost. Maurice Claret, he sued about the NFL draft. He lost. They all won on the first cases. They were all overturned on appeal by the higher court, and they all lost. They all lost because courts do not want to get involved in these collectively bargained disputes. You have a collective bargaining agreement. It was agreed to by the league and the union, or in whatever employer and whatever union. And, the union agreed to it. They agreed to it. I think that they got bent over backward in the last negotiation. It was done under pressure right at the start of the pandemic. They agreed to a 10-year contract with no outs. That's terrible for them. But, they agreed to it. And it was a very close vote. If you remember, I believe it was like 52% of the union approved it. But the NFL took advantage. It's what it is. They took advantage of the opportunity during the pandemic to slam through a deal that was favorable to them. And usually I tend to be on the side of the players. That's what happened. I mean, that's what the NFL did. That's what they did. But it is what it is now. The union agreed to it. They agreed to it. They agreed to this process, and they won't win in a court if the NFL imposes whatever Roger Goodell or his designee imposes is almost certainly going to stand eventually. Now, that's the key part. The eventually part. Let's get to the eventually part. The eventually part is, so there's really a few options that could happen. One, what I think is unlikely, given the backlash from this, what I think is unlikely is the NFL just accepts Judge Robinson's ruling. 6 games. Okay, we accept that. It'll be 6 games. Done. Watson's not going to appeal. 6 games. And then he comes back week 7. And that's it. That's one option. We'll find that out in the next 3 days if that's going to happen. Option 2 is that the NFL goes through the appeals process, they impose something and Watson is just like, I'll accept it. I'll accept it. I suspect that if it's 10 games, he'll probably accept it. He probably won't sue. Now, then there's option 3, which I actually think is the most likely. Most likely is the NFL imposes the full year. They go to the full year. And then I would expect Watson to sue. Now, in that case, what will likely happen is that the presiding judge, I guess this is what happened in the other cases, the presiding judge in that case will issue an injunction preventing the suspension from taking place. Now, I talked about this a month ago. I talked about this 2 months ago. So if you were listening to the channel then, I told you that this was a possibility months ago. And it's still a possibility now that what could happen is that the suspension is actually stopped and he plays week 1. But then I don't expect him to win the case. So whenever he loses it, the suspension will then be enforced at that point. So you could have a year suspension coming later. That's part of why I think if it's just 10 games, he'll just accept it. He'll accept it. 10 games, serve your 10 games, and that's it. But I do think the NFL might go up to the 12 games we're talking about, 12 games with possibility of return. That's an indefinite 12 game, indefinite with possibility to reapply after 12 games. I think that was their best settlement offer. The NFL never made a settlement offer of a fixed amount of games. They never made that offer. So we'll see what they want to do. But either way, we'll find out in the next 3 days. I mean, they're either going to appeal. They have 3 days to appeal. So they're either going to appeal or they're not. If they don't, it's easy. It's 6 games. That's it. If they do, then there's still a lot of uncertainty. It could be the whole year. It could be the 6 games. Although they're not going to, if they appeal, it's going to go up. So there's no, we know that if the NFL hears their own case, I think that they're going to, who do you think they're going to rule in favor of? Who do you think they're going to rule in favor of? Do you think they're going to rule in favor of themselves or the NFLPA and Watson? Do you think, I think we know they're going to rule in favor of themselves. That's how the process worked before. So, it is what it is. At this point, I would say in terms of the fantasy impact, now might be a good time to, depends on who it is. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they're still in a committee. I didn't really move their rank all that much. Not too much has changed. I think the big one for me to sell is Amari Cooper. He was bad last year with Dak. He was bad. People don't talk about it, but he was not good. Is Deshaun Watson that much better than Dak? Dak Prescott has had periods where he's the best passing quarterback in the league. Is Deshaun Watson going to fix Amari Cooper when Dak Prescott couldn't do it? Even with Michael Gallup out for long periods of time? I don't think so. Amari Cooper is a huge sell for me. I don't get it. I think his ceiling is wide receiver. If I knew I had a full season of Watson, I have Brandon Cooks at 19, Terry McLaurin at 20, Mike Williams at 21. That's the range. That's the range I would have Amari Cooper. If I had a full season, I'd probably have him behind all those guys at 22. If I had a full season of Watson, 22, I think is fair. I still have him at 30 because I don't know how many Watson games I'm going to get. I know I'm not getting 6. It's already not getting 6. In redraft, you care more about the beginning. With Brissett, Cooper is not a top 30, even 35 option. Cooper is a low end 3. So, yeah, I have him at 30 for now. I'm still not very interested. In Dynasty, this is maybe your sell window because he looked awful. You look at the underlying metrics, he took a big step back last year. And then there's really no one else in the Browns. David Njoku signed a long-term contract. You were looking past this year. David Bell is a rookie. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, I don't believe in at all. So, it's not too much actually has changed. Plus, we still don't know how long the suspension is going to be. Now, with all of that being said, I will say that when it comes to how to talk about this going forward, because what's going to happen, and we know what's going to happen, is that eventually Deshaun Watson is going to play football again. And people are going to start to forget about what happened. I will say that I will never let it go. I'll never let it go. Because why should I? Why should I let it go? The NFL doesn't, I'm not beholden to the NFL or the Browns. I don't give a shit. I don't care what they think of me. I'll never let it go. I'll never let it go. And we talked about this earlier many times, that in the court of Tyler, Deshaun Watson is guilty. He's guilty, and my mind's not going to change. Nothing about this process made my mind change. If anything, the process just confirmed what I thought. Judge Robinson said that Watson did have sexual misconduct, just not violent sexual misconduct. I mean, that doesn't sound different from what I believed the whole time. I didn't really believe that there was violence involved. I just believe that for what he did, he should have a far longer suspension. That's where I differ with Judge Robinson. But what she says the facts were, I don't see why that would change my mind. That's exactly what I thought happened. So, I still, again, she said that he was guilty. Like, read what she said. She said she said that he was guilty. She just believes in she came up with a different punishment for that guilt. But she said that he was guilty. So, to me, he's guilty. And I'm never going to let it go. Because they want to pretend that, and I've said this, the NFL cares about image and money and nothing else. Image and money. That's all they care about. And this has the image that there was some sort of independent process. But, that's why. I mean, you know it. I know it. No, that's why. I mean, it's image. That's why they care. And it is what it is. I feel that, look, this is and it is the kind of thing, like, that's the other thing. And I'll close the show with this, because I think we know how I feel about Deshaun Watson. I'll never root for him again. I don't like him. I won't change my mind. I've seen enough. The judge's report only confirms what I believe anyway. So I think he's guilty. I'm never going to let it go. And if I were the NFL, Roger Goodell, I would impose my discipline and let him sue. Let him sue. He could go for it. Let him sue me. And I would take the court case, because I don't, that's what I believe in. So that's what I would go for. But from a fantasy football perspective, you are going to have to make a decision on, can you draft, trade for, root for, whatever, Deshaun Watson on your fantasy team moving forward. Now, for me, oddly enough, this probably is going to come as a surprise given what I've said so far, is that for me, at this point, I drafted him onto my Scott Fishbowl team. I mean, we know that. We saw me draft him. I posted about it on Twitter. It wasn't a secret. I drafted him in the 11th round, knowing that there was a possibility that he could play for some of the year or all of it if the injunction process works that way. And the way I see it is this: Deshaun Watson is going to play for somebody's fantasy team. What's going to make me more upset? Having him play on mine, or having someone else get him for nothing and then that person beats me? Like, this is not a winning. There's no win to this scenario. It's an unfortunate part of fantasy football, is that you're going to have players that, are not good human beings. And I'm comfortable saying that Deshaun Watson is not a good human being, and I will never let it go. I'll repeat it in every time if I have to. I'll never let it go. He'll never be able to convince me. He'll never be able to change my mind. It's over. In my mind of him as a person, I won't ever forgive him. So there's no point. It doesn't matter. He can't do anything to change my mind. But in terms of fantasy football, will I probably draft him again? Yes. It affects me more as a content creator than as a fantasy manager. Will you hear me be excited about Deshaun Watson? Like, when I talk about Deshaun Watson, you'll notice that I'm just not rooting for him. I'm just not excited. I'm probably going to talk about him with a significant amount of contempt. And if that brings me ire from Browns fans, bring it. I don't care. But as a fantasy manager, I'm fine drafting him. Someone's going to. And I'm okay with it, The reason I don't like players like this is mostly because of the risk and having to deal with the headache, especially in a dynasty league for long periods of time. So I didn't want to draft Deshaun Watson last year because I would have had to deal with a year and a half of headache. I don't need that. But but it's different once the process is over. Once the process is over and it's just this person did a shitty thing. I don't like this person. Can I still draft them? That is a different calculus. That's just what makes you happy. If you're the kind of person who does not want to draft Deshaun Watson, don't draft him. You don't have to. I'm not going to tell you don't, to do it, because you should play your fantasy team how you want to play it. However you want to play it. I give advice to do the best I can for you, especially on my Patreon. I want you to win. So I do on the show. So I do on my Patreon. So I do on Twitter. I give advice to help you win. But if you would have more fun to go in a different way, go a different way. At the end of the day, most people who are asking me for advice don't play in high stakes fantasy leagues. They're playing for fun. This is a hobby. So do what you need to do. But I'm not going to. When we get to start sit and we get to Deshaun Watson being a part of start sit, I'm going to rank him normally. I'm going to give advice normally. And that is what it is. I mean, it sucks, but that's what I have to do. There's no other option at this stage. But will I continue to read this? Coming from a Browns fan, I don't think many people will give you crap about hating Watson. I think most of the ire comes from fans when fan base is blamed for the decision of the organization. Well, I will say that I've not been treated very well by Browns fans on Twitter. If you're coming to watch my show, you're probably a subscriber to my YouTube channel. You've supported me for a long time. You're probably more of a fantasy fan than a Browns loyalist. The hate that I get from Browns fans is on Twitter. And because I have 27,000 followers and not every follower is, a fantasy football person. But anyway, it is what it is. We know I'm not going to change. Like I'm going to be me. So, as I always say, like if you don't like it, you don't like it. And anyway, there are some people who are saying that the NFL won't appeal. Those people are wrong. They have to. They have to. They have no choice. Because they've been backed into a corner here. And the PR optics of this are horrible. And, they're gonna appeal. And bring the hammer down and take the court case. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. It's funny. Like, in terms of fantasy football, I'm actually surprised at how little I have to say. Because I guess we just there's no finality here. And that's the main point I wanted to bring across from this stream. And I'm not going to do another stream after the appeal. I'm not going to do another whatever. I wanted to come on alone and give my opinion on how I feel about Deshaun Watson, how this whole process has been, in my opinion, fucked up, and how I believe, and I will say this until the end of time, and I think the Calvin Ridley suspension proves it, the NFL does not give a shit about women, about sexual misconduct or assault, any of that. The only thing the NFL cares about is their bottom line. And that's why you see Calvin Ridley being suspended for a year and Deshaun Watson for 6 games based on their own CBA. That's why you see that, because they do not care about anything other than money and PR, which indirectly leads to what? Money. That's what PR does. PR, at the end of the day, boils down to a certain amount of money. And that's all they care about. You know it. I know it. And anyone who doesn't realize that has their head in the sand. And they should know better. They should know better than to believe that the NFL actually gives a shit about anybody. They don't care at all. They don't care at all. They didn't punish the owners. Why didn't they punish the owners? One, because the owners employ the commissioner. But the second reason they didn't punish them is the PR angle. The owners are not playing on the field. We don't talk about the owners. It's not as bad PR as it is for a player. That's why. Between that and the owners, employing the commissioner, those reasons are why we're in this situation in the first place from the NFL's previous inconsistencies and transgressions from the past on how they've dealt with their own owners. So, they haven't done a good job there either. I mean, the NFL has done a poor job everywhere. I mean, this is, it is what it is. Now, I will say, there's one thing I will say, and that I think maybe some less ire should be dealt towards. I think it should mostly be focused on Watson. I would not put a lot of ire toward the NFLPA. The job of a union is to defend every one of its members. They are legally obligated to defend Watson. They have no choice. If they did not, they would be in violation of their legal obligations. The NFLPA is in a bind. They have no choice. So I wouldn't really, again, I'm usually on the side of the players. I'm usually on the side of the owners take advantage of the players. Typically, that's what I believe. I think that they do. I think they do. And I wouldn't put, again, a negative on the players union for doing really what they are legally obligated to do. They have no choice. But, save the ire for Deshaun Watson himself. I would not, don't use this as an argument against unions or against, player bargaining power or any of those things. I would not go there. I don't think that's the case in this case. Deshaun Watson's bad actions should stand for themselves, and he should take responsibility, which he has not done. Not done at all. He hasn't taken any responsibility. Why would he? He's, again, a terrible person. He's taking no responsibility, no accountability, nothing, zero. But I wouldn't necessarily blame it all on the NFLPA. That's, they have to defend him. They don't have a choice. I know there hasn't been much fantasy talk in this. And, I think that's okay. Again, because we don't have finality. Is it going to be 6 games? Is it going to be 12 games? Is it going to be, because there's a big difference if it's 6 games or 12 games. So those are wildly different. If it's 6 games, I probably, you can plan for it. If it's 12 games, it's basically like it's the whole season. I wouldn't draft any of those players. So, it is what it is. And we just have to now wait for the NFL's appeal process. And then we'll have, I'm sure I may or may not be, I have to go somewhere. So I may or may not be on some part of today's show from my phone trying to tune into the StreamYard. I know Ryan's done that in the past. So yeah, it's been kind of a crazy week. My computer keyboard broke. So they were trying to get that fixed and going all around everywhere. And then on top of that, it's also Patreon Day, the first of a month, where my Patreon subscriptions renew. So there's that. If you're interested in signing up, I put the link on my Twitter. As always, I appreciate everyone who watches any of my content. I know there's a few of you in the live chat. I assume most will watch this after the fact because I didn't give much notice that I was doing this stream. But again, anyone who's watching, just, leave a comment, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. And we'll have my regular show at 2 p.m. Eastern. Again, Hutch will be filling in for me. So he'll be taking my spot. And then Ryan and Conan will be in their usual spots doing that thing. But yeah, again, I'm going to wait to give too much fantasy analysis until the NFL's appeal process is over. And we'll find out in the next few days if they decide to appeal. And I think the NFL appeal will be fast. There's no independent arbitrator. I think Goodell will. I think if the NFL does decide to appeal, today is August 1st. I think we'll get that decision sometime next week. So I think this will be wrapped unless there's a lawsuit. And who knows? But I think the NFL's appeal process will not take very long if they decide to do that. And I think they will. I think they have to. So, yeah. Other than that, just check out my Patreon. Thanks for supporting the channel, this channel here. Follow me on Twitter over there if you haven't done that. And yeah, I may or may not see you guys in a couple hours, but even if I'm not there, Hutch and Ryan and Conan will hold it down for me. And yeah, I've got tomorrow I'll be on Ask DLF. I'm sure this will come up. I will say that just, don't make comments that are insensitive in the chat. I will block you, and that'll be the last time you can comment on any DLF anything. So don't do that. Just be respectful, be sensitive, and just be understanding that this is a serious issue and treat it as a serious issue. So I just warn people about that in the comment section tomorrow night. So just don't behave. I appreciate that. And then I actually will be on Dynasty Game Night as well this week. It's not live, but on Wednesday we will record it. I don't know when it comes out, but I'm very excited. Me actually against Ryan McDowell and Matt Price. So very strong competition. But I, hoping to do well. Even if I don't, it'll be a good time. I thought about that. I've actually said this too. Thank you for reminding me. I actually did say this. The statute of limitations on his lawsuits runs out in March. I actually think that would be, I don't think he should have been able to play until that was over with how many lawsuits there were. There could always be more lawsuits at any time. So I've said that in the past as well. And I agree. I think that it should, that's what I think why the NFL's in position was a year with possibility to apply, which is what I would have done. But anyway, I don't think there's anything more to say. I think we're going around and I'm just going around in circles and just spinning my wheels. I will talk about this more as we get a final punishment, the exact fantasy impact. But, just again, I think the biggest takeaway is that just this is serious. Treat it seriously. I know we play a game and that's important. And I like this to be an escape, but this is in some ways more serious. Well, I mean, in every way, this is more serious than that. And it deserves, a discussion on its own, not just how it impacts fantasy football. So I appreciate everyone for watching and giving me the time to do that. But anyway, I will potentially see you guys in a couple of hours. If not, they'll hold it down for me, and I'll see you guys on AskDLF. And, thanks to everyone, and peace.